Hello everyone, my name is Ayomide Emmanuel Agbola. Welcome to my SQL learning documentary. Today we'll be talking about the aggregate functions in SQL. And the aggregate function we have to be count, sum, average, mean, and max. We'll be talking about every one of these aggregate functions, but I will have to divide them. I will have to divide this video in 3 segments so it will be easier for us to look at everything at a go. Now, we are going to be starting with count. Let me say aggregate function itself, it means you trying to summarize your data in getting a single outcome. When you're using aggregate function, your result will always come out in single outcome. It's always single row and single results when you are talking about aggregate function. And look at aggregate function. It's like a mathematics terms. Count you help us to know the number of rows, number of products, number of employees, and all. Sum it help us to know the total values. So we'll be starting with count. And in the question, I want to know the number of BOs that I have. The total number of BOs that I have is what I will be using as my first question, which goes with the average with the aggregate function count. And I said count does what? It count the number of rows in SQL with that function. So I'll be using this query to return the total BOs, the total number of my BOs. I want to count the total BOs that I have to know their number. And this query returns 500, which is exactly the number of BOs that I recorded in my database during the inception of this documentary. So that is what count does in SQL. It lets you know you want to know the number of products, you want to know the number of employees, you want to know the number of rows, you use count. That is what count does for us in our SQL. And the next one we'll be talking about is sum. And like I said, sum is like a mathematics term. It's not the same thing we do in our mathematics when we are going to say sum this number with this number. It means to add up everything. In sum, it add up a whole column. It add up a whole column. In sum adds up a whole column. Why count the whole rows in a table? It counts the whole rows in a table and sum up a whole column. Maybe you have a number of the total number salary. You want to know the sum of total salary. You want to know the sum of transaction that my BO has done in the past few days or not or all. So we use sum for that. Sum help us to return the values. It add up the total values, and don't forget that aggregate function return only single value. It's return only single value. So you don't have any other thing than a single value in your aggregate function. It's just single outcome. So I said sum, it adds up values. Yes, it adds up values in the table. It lets you know the total salary. It lets you know the total and transaction days. It lets you know everything you want to know in a value. So I'll be running a query that will show the total transaction of all my 500 BOs. Select sum. Sum is the aggregate function there, and it must always be outside the bracket. When you have the column you want to work with in the parentheses. So we have the sum transaction as total transaction. In the end of this lesson, in the last video that I will be posting, I would let us see why I'm putting AX, and that is alias in SQL. We know what it means and what is used for in SQL. So can we see now we have the total transaction of the 500 BOs here now. So that is what sum does. It gives us the total values, the total of the value that we are looking for. Count just let us know the number of rows, the number of products that we have. So I'm sure that these two functions, when you see them in your maybe on the job or in learning, you can differentiate them. Thank you very much.